Hey Addicts, welcome back. We're here for another comic review. This time we're talking about The Walking Dead. Yeah, you thought it was dead? Well, it technically is, and this is what killed it, but we're here to talk about it. This is issue 192 called Aftermath. And yeah, this one's a hot take. There's a lot of stuff in here that is probably going to be the last issue a lot of fans read for the series. So yeah, with that being said, this is a death issue. I'm sure everybody knows by now because it's been a couple weeks since it's released. The biggest death issue probably in the entire series, past, present, and future. So yeah, we're going to talk about it. Here's your spoiler warning real quick because we are going to go briefly over like what happens in the comic. So 3, 2, 1. Okay, so if you're still here, don't blame me. So we open up with this comic, like most of them, taking off where the last one left off, and Rick is officially a goner. You're sitting there, and I mean, I'm pretty sure this shot, we've talked about it in the comments, this shot looks very fatal. I mean, they could have, done some like comic logic and had Rick survive this, but, Kirkman doesn't leave any possibility. He has this guy just unload his gun basically on Rick. For some reason I'm forgetting the little shit's name, but anyway, it doesn't matter because he had no depth, no background established whatsoever really. That's probably why I don't remember his name off the top of my head. But we get to see, Rick is officially dead in his bed, and it's just like, it's so, I'll get into it here in a minute, but we go through like a whole page of like Rick just laying there dead on his bed with the door left open. There is one thing here, like it transitions onto the next page, opening up with Carl, kind of like a fresh, I guess, reopening of the story. And I don't know, I don't think Kirkman even gave this a thought, but I do kind of like how after Rick's immediate death, we open up with Carl, like waking up in bed. I don't know, maybe it's just like my brain trying to justify some goodness out of this issue and having, that correlation between when Carl woke up, or not Carl, Rick woke up in the hospital. But we get to see, Carl has a little interaction with Jesus. They were like, oh, it's so great out today, not knowing the thing that just happened. You get Carl walking in on zombie Rick, which I do like this, but then again, it's like something, a zombified Rick I don't think would never not be cool. I know, double negative there. But it's just, it's really a nice look. I mean, in some ways it's hard for that not to be iconic, but I've always known that Rick was probably going to die in the story, or at least, at some point. I don't know if he'd ever turn into a zombie, but I figured he probably would. So seeing a zombie Rick has been like in my top tier list for, seeing things in the story. And so that was cool. But again, it's like, it's very quick. I mean, you only see it in like 3 panels. There's not much reaction from Carl, which I do like eventually that they go back and, Carl talks how he just kind of reacted. He saw a walker, he didn't really see his father. And then when he realized, that the walker was his father, then he breaks down. So I do like that little bit. But again, like, you get to see like Carl drops to the floor and he's like, completely emotionally crushed that, that was Rick and now he's dead. But you get these guards that walk past and they're like, oh shit, the door's open. Was that a gunshot? And it's like, dude, if these guards are sitting in this building, how did they not hear like the 8 gunshots pop up in the middle of the night? Or even if they're doing like hourly patrols, how did nobody see the open door to begin with? So, I mean, especially we see Mercer come in and, kind of like kneel down behind Carl. So we know he was probably the most protective of Rick at all, if anybody that was living at the Commonwealth. So I don't know, that part is like, oh, here we go again. But then we get this moment with Michonne and Carl. And, obviously they're having like a grieving process. It's focusing more on Carl at this point, so we don't get really any insight to how Michonne feels. But just in this issue, Michonne has a very stone-cold attitude. I think she expresses her opinion a little bit in the next, like in one instance in the pages coming. But it's only like a little bit. We get this interaction between Pamela talking about her son, because they obviously know that he did it. And this is week 2. Pamela, I don't even know why the fuck she's sitting in her desk they took away her power, which I don't know, all of that's kind of stupid. They have this whole thing where Pamela's like, oh, I love my son, but we'll make sure he spends the rest of his life behind bars. And Carl goes through it because he wants to keep Rick's legacy or his ideals going forward, because he believes in what his dad had established. So again, this is something that, in terms of the story, it makes sense, and from just from a society standpoint, that would probably be the moral or the right decision. I don't know. For some reason, in stories like this, it always jars me a little bit because the way Maggie kind of handled Gregory back at the Hilltop. I always saw that as probably something that would be more realistic, or more people would probably go for, because again, it's like, I understand they've had that line back and forth, but it is just kind of stupid in my opinion that we see that. But again, like, I understand Rick's trying to be a good guy, and Carl wants to honor his dad's legacy. But yeah, anyway, we get to see Pamela still left at her desk, and then we get the visit with Carl to Pamela's son, and we see that this guy's trying to talk his way out of it. He's like, oh, your dad took everything from me, yada yada yada. Got a whole big speech, and then Carl is like, shut the fuck up. Let me tell you how it is. I'm gonna watch you rot in this cell. And I do like this darker side of Carl that we see in this. It kind of has a mixture of like Rick and Negan, and so I do like that. The ending a little bit where he says ta-ta at the end, I think is a bit much. It definitely is very reminiscent of Negan, and you can see how Negan's rubbed off on Carl throughout the years, but I don't know, Carl doesn't seem eccentric enough for that to really be pulled off in a badass way. It seems more silly, but overall, I do like that we get to see that Carl is, he's not completely fine by this scenario, like some of the other characters seemingly to be okay with. At the end of the issue, it's winding down. We get to see that Carl is going to take Rick's body back to Alexandria to bury next to Andrea, and everybody basically in the Commonwealth, or at least the lower class people, and it looks like people that were originally from the other communities that we know of, are going back to kind of honor Rick and be there at his funeral. And on the trek back, we get to see Carl kind of break down a little bit and being like, I can't go on. And that's basically how the issue ends. Okay, so that's the end of the recap. I'm going to get into more of my solid opinions here. This is a lot of wasted potential, in my opinion. Rick, it's not so much that I hate how he went out. It's more of just the execution of it. For one, this arc, and pretty much, well, I was going to say a little bit of the Whisperer War, but mostly this arc with the Commonwealth, we've just seen a complete lack of world building, or at least good world building. I think in this issue, it really would have benefited to see a higher, not higher power, but, like more people being involved in Rick's death, like seeing the cunt's son maybe was like the one that did it, but, had people, maybe like the other wealthy have like a play in it, or, there's something else there, but we didn't get anything like that. So just seeing that like his son, like this son was acting on a whim, it's, I don't know, it just feels flat. And for Rick's death, like I said, the zombie thing is just something that's just automatically going to be cool. When you have a character that iconic in in a zombie story like this, I think any character really being zombified is going to be cool. But his death itself just doesn't feel like something for the character that he was. I don't know. It's not like, I want something like super, I guess, dramatic where, he's taken down like a whole army, or like they're facing like the biggest bad they've ever had, and like he ends up killing the guy, but he has to sacrifice himself in order to kill him. Not something like that, but I don't know, like there's just a lot of deaths in at least the beginning part of The Walking Dead that were just so iconic, even if they weren't, that crazy, like Carol's death is simple but like still really memorable, where she commits suicide and the zombie chomps out her throat, or like Dale where he's got the tainted meat thing, or Glenn with Negan's head smack. It's like those are, I mean, I guess you could call them epic in their own right, but they're like iconic deaths, and we didn't really get that. I mean, Rick just got capped in the chest when he was sleeping, basically. So I don't know. It's one. I guess it is what it is. You can't change it, but it is something that feels flat. I guess the reason why I would say I'm a little lackluster of it mostly is because in the letter hacks that Kirkman does, he says that Rick's death is the one that obviously was the biggest thing for him, and so he had it working in his mind years down the road, and he said it was like close to 10 years that he knew how Rick's story was going to end, and it's like, bro, you can't just shooting him in the chest, really? That was the best you could come up with out of 10 years of thinking? You couldn't think of anything more and he knew, he said he knew who was going to kill Rick as soon as he introduced the character, I'm sorry, I keep on, Sebastian, right? As soon as he introduced Sebastian, he knew he was going to kill Rick, and it's like, okay, if you knew that as soon as you started developing the story, why didn't you, I don't know, do something like we see a little bit more of Sebastian's character, or like I said, have something in the Commonwealth, because the Commonwealth itself has been really just quickly done and sloppily executed. It's they've had this set up to where it's it's the rich people and the people in power versus the working class, and it wasn't really like that, even though they set up like that. It was more like, okay, these two are ruling, and then you have all these people, and it's like you have thousands of people in this community and they're all bowing to two people, Sebastian and Pamela. It's like, I don't see how that would even work. That's just not going to happen. So you're going to have some other wealthy people, when Rick completely decimated their whole idea of their community, you still have all of the rich people out here. And were they okay with it? I bet you they weren't. People in our society wouldn't be pleased if they were making so much and they were getting all these benefits, and then you come in and tell them they're not going to be able to have that. So not seeing something like a bigger, not threat, but just a more layered story. All of it's just rushed. I guess this issue is the very ending of Compendium 3, so he was probably worried about fitting it in there instead of actually creating some, great content for the end of Rick's story. But I will say it feels very rushed. I think we could have gotten at least another volume with Rick in there, and it probably would have been a lot better too if he would have fleshed that out. But it just feels rushed at the end of the day, and it's just a disappointment to see that's how Rick's story ends. To be honest, I have zero interest. After I saw Rick die, I was like, all right, I'm not really into it. And it's bad to say, because I'm not somebody that, one character's dead, I want to be over with the story. But, for a lot of things, Rick was the center. As much as Kirkman likes to say, oh no, this is an ensemble cast, and it's about everybody and living in this world. And I get that, it definitely is an ensemble cast. We have a lot of characters that have come and gone, but you can't really say Rick wasn't the centerfold that was holding everything together. And while I think, Rick eventually could have exited the story and still had the story stand by itself after he was gone, I don't think that this was the time or the place. So at the end of the day, I think The Walking Dead in my mind is done. In my heart, this is the official canon ending. And it's kind of sad because I haven't really been fully liking everything since probably All Out War. So, I might pick it up here and there to see kind of what they're doing with it, but I don't know. To me, it's probably just gonna, in my mind, gonna see it as a spin-off. Especially, we didn't talk about it because I don't think they had released the issue yet, but in 194, which is 2 issues later, we have this one that's called The Last Shot, and it basically looks like TV mixed with comic Rick Grimes, but blackface. So I don't know what to make of that. It really seems like Kirkman just wanted Rick out of the story, and you know, he wanted to bring in other people. I don't know if I don't know. This really does not look good, you know, from a marketing standpoint, especially when you have, you know, Rick's death looming in, like issues leading up to his death. So I don't know. That's probably going to be a dumpster fire in itself. You know, Kirkman, I saw trying to defend some of the world building aspects, like we were, you know, like I discussed earlier. And, you know, they were trying to defend all of that, and it's just, I don't know, it's a shit show, really. So I think that's why, you know, the writing has just gotten so piss poor, and we got no, I think we took a step back more than get a payoff, or whatever that was. So, yeah, I think it's done. So for people looking at this issue, I mean, I don't know if you care anything for The Walking Dead. I guess you'll want to see it just to see how Rick dies. But, I mean, to be honest, like, I wouldn't even say it's worthwhile getting that, just because it happens so fast, and it's just, like, nothing that's worth the read, you know? It's just, I don't know. It's not what I think the fans deserved. And so, you know, if you even remotely you know, like the story, or you love Rick as a character, I think it's just going to end up being a disappointment to you. I'm sure collectors out there are going to want to get it just because, like, you know, it's a big issue. So, you know, people are going to want to have that in their collection, you know, eventually if they want to keep it to sell for stuff. But as for a read, no. You know, I guess if you want the definitive, you know, story of Rick, you just pick up the first 3 compendiums. I personally, I don't know. Looking back at it, I kind of want it to just, in my mind, ended at the very ending of Compendium 3, where, you know, Rick's just like, all right, we're going to make a better world, and then just have that as the ending. But, it's just so sad. Anyway, I'm done talking. I'm just disappointed. I was in a very good mood, and now I'm kind of bummed out, so I'm going to have to go cheer myself up again. This is actually the first video I'm making since me and Michael have been back. We were on vacation, so yeah, expect more stuff. We're gonna have a bunch of Damachi stuff coming up soon. I don't know if you guys watching this even care about that, but if you're interested in a really good story, hey, you should check that out because it's really good. As far as other comic stuff, we're gonna, you know, keep doing it. I don't know if anybody watched the bulk review thing. I don't think many people checked that out, which is fine. But if we do go back and even look and see how bad The Walking Dead is, I might mention it there, because I've been reading The Walking Dead for free ever since the story arc, basically. So no hurting my wallet. But anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think of the issue. Is this the end of The Walking Dead for you? It probably is for me. I don't see anything that's going to be interesting at all for me. So yeah, let me know if there's any other comics you want to cover. We are going to be doing individual reviews, but I really want to grab one that a lot of people are going to be interested in, because, you know, it's just not an effective use of my time if only like a few people are into the comics. So if there is, you know, one or multiple, let me know, and I'll try to figure out where to fit it at, either if it's a, you know, full video, or if it's like in the bulk review. But anyway, guys, I'll see you, and I'm glad to be back, and I hope we have a lot more stuff to talk about with you guys. So hopefully it's better news next time. But anyway, guys, peace, addicts.